This is SSN
Story Studio Network.
I'm Tom Hoppe, and I'm your host of the Most Painful Podcast. On our last episode, we spoke to Dr. Sarah Vadaboncourt about menopause and the impact it can have on the body, hormones, and heart. She spoke about some available treatments and other helpful tips. There's a lot of information on that episode, so if you missed this episode, you can listen to it on our Spotify and Apple Podcast. So on this podcast, we talk to clinicians and researchers on the latest treatments or evidence-based information to help you gain knowledge so you can advocate for yourself and improve your quality of life. Chronic pain research is conducted by many different organizations, and today we're going to speak to Cam Kowalski, the Director of Operations for the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence, and discuss how the research process they are doing is helping to improve chronic pain. Cam, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tom.
So, the CPCoE funds this podcast, and they've been around since 2020, where they started up. And we've had Ramesh on the show, like episode 1, season 1, talking about the CPCoE. I think we're up to about 50 research projects that are on the go. And as the new ops managers, maybe you can just tell us a bit about your background on how you ended up here with chronic pain, or your journey on chronic pain. And then I guess we can talk about what the CPCoE is doing differently than some of the other organizations.
Yeah, Tom. Again, thanks for having me. And it's a pleasure to talk to you about what the CPCoE does. It's new to me, of course. I've been on board since July 2nd when I started. But to kind of frame it as asked, looking at my background and kind of a circuitous route to how I got there from here is quite interesting. My background is a policing background. I served 34 years in various policing capacities throughout the country. I did my last almost 20 years in British Columbia with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And as you know, in your experience specifically, it's a challenging job and creates many issues, both physically and mentally, I will say, with some certainty, just because of the nature of the job that we do. But in answer to your question, 25 of the 34 years that I did was on the front line, and the equipment that we wear, which is not dissimilar to a lot of the equipment that the CAF members wear, is anywhere between 16 and 18 pounds around your waist. But if you equate that to 12 hours a day for 25 years, things tend to break, which in my case, they did, in multiple areas. And as you get older, things develop, such as osteoarthritis, et cetera, in some of those areas that were inflicted with the extra weight and such, and kind of that's what happened. So I was medically released from the RCMP in 2018 and went to work in the private sector for about 5 years afterwards. But something was drawing me back to Hamilton, where I was born and raised, started my career here. My family was here. So it was, all right, pack up everything and move back to Hamilton. Now, my chronic pain continued, and as fate would have it, I was sent to the DeGroote Pain Management Clinic at McMaster University in Hamilton for a 5-week intensive pain program, which I found quite valuable. And it was there where I met Dr. Zacharias, Ramesh, and some 8 months to a year later, there was an opening at the CPCoE for a director of operations. I had the qualifications. I had a master's degree in leadership. I had, 38 years of experience leading people. So I said, well, I've got nothing to lose if I apply for this job. I'm already retired. I'm really good at that, and I really like it. But if I had to come out of retirement, it was for a position such as this, supporting the operations and looking at ways to improve the well-being of veterans.
Yeah, and policing is a challenging career. And when we talk about chronic pain, I'd be interested to hear, how much knowledge did you have about chronic pain and pain science?
During my career and towards the latter parts of my career, nothing. I knew that I had injuries, and I didn't associate the injuries to a chronic disease. chronic pain, they just didn't go together. It just didn't fit in my mind because we're never taught that as we move through in our career. Nobody sits you down and says, okay, well, we think because of this, and this, that you've got that. It's a different model from what the members of the Canadian Armed Forces have, where they have medical practitioners on bases and such. We're all sent to, or not sent to. We get our own private GP and go through that system. So it's not a lot of our clinicians are unfamiliar with our duties and why they extrapolate to be chronic pain injuries. They don't have that knowledge because they don't treat a lot of veterans in their practices.
Yeah, and I think that's the same, because I asked that question because, this is part of why the CPCoE is formed, is for research and knowledge, and part of why we do the podcast. And myself included, is I didn't know much about chronic pain either, because same in the culture of the military is you're not talking about it, the leadership is not aware of it, and that is not the mission of the leadership. And usually if you have an injury and you go see the medical doctor, it's a pretty quick in and out. They want to get you back in the field and get moving. So that's why I was asking that question. So we talk about the CPCoE, and we look at how it was formed. And I think maybe you can just touch on that really quickly, just to remind our audience about how the CPCoE was developed and how it was formed. And maybe we can talk a little bit about the uniqueness of how they approach the research process.
Sure. Yeah. So it came to being in approximately 2019, where Veterans Affairs was looking at a model of making, if you will, centers of excellence to as a result of some of the challenges that they had with veterans and the support that they needed. And so there was two that were created in and around the same time. One being Atlas, which I won't talk about, but they're specifically their mandate is mental health amongst veterans. And then they created the CPCoE, which was our mission was to improve the well-being of veterans and their families that suffer from chronic pain. So they created a great organization. We are a not-for-profit. We are not affiliated to McMaster University or Hamilton Health Sciences. They are more like a strategic partnership that we have. And so we were tasked with, figuring out how to improve the well-being through research. There was no blueprint given to us. There was no, all right, you need to do this, and this, and then you'll get a product that results. No, it's like literally, the words were, you figure it out. And we've been doing that for 5 years now and have been very successful at what we're doing. So we're proud of that, and the fact that we've been around for 5 years. But we're bound by, because we're funded by Veterans Affairs, we're bound by a contribution agreement. And basically the contribution agreement sets out how we do things, why we do things, some of the benchmarks that we have to meet as far as like strategic partnerships per year, et cetera. It's our game plan, if you will, for the CPCoE. So again, we've got that foundational piece that is built, but we're arm's length from Veterans Affairs to make it very clearly, because the stated that a lot of the veterans that we interact with think that we are VAC, which we are not. So I want to make that quite clear. So that's kind of, again, it's same as it with me. It's a bit of a circuitous route to where we've gotten to from here. So that's the CPCoE in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I remember coming on with the CPCoE back in 2020, early 20, just before COVID. Seems like a long time ago. And I think what's important there is my experience, 18 plus years working in the veteran space, is that a lot of stuff is based on opinion and emotion versus fact. And I think the CPCoE is looking at evidence-based. So when we're talking about chronic pain and we're trying to get that message out there, that's what I'm seeing, I think is important, is that we're really looking at the research and what the evidence is to support knowledge and change. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that's why, it's so important what we do is because it's evidence-based. Now, it's veteran-led, as you know, because we created what's called an ACV, or Advisory Council of Veterans, which, Tom, you were the first person that kind of led that charge, so you'll know more than I do about it. But foundationally, it's a great concept in that we have a group of dedicated CAF members that come up with the research that we're going to do. Now, I know the group, and there's no clinicians within that group because they're retired CAF members. There's one or two that have some experience, but when they come up with the concept of research and what they want to research, or what they want us to research as a CPCoE, that's just the start of the game. Then it goes to the PSP, or priority setting process, and then it goes to RFP, or request for proposals, out to academic institutions throughout the country, and then they do the evidence-based research, which then creates a product at the end of it that we can promote. And as you referred to early in the podcast, we've done 60 projects. So the 60 projects aren't just Cam and Tom's good ideas, and we think that it's got some validity. No, they are evidence-based papers or research that has been done based on what the veterans in our ACV have dictated that they want researched. So it's a very concrete process, and as you said, it's very much evidence-based and not somebody's theory or concept.
Yeah, because I think the evidence-based part is very important, especially with the research process and the selection of how that process goes using the ACV. But I think it's important for the audience to understand too. I mean, the outcomes of this is not just helping veterans. It can help anybody when we talk about chronic pain. So it's not just, I would suggest, to military veterans or to RCMP veterans. It for anybody.
Yeah,
I mean, you've been through the DeGroote, right? So you can tell me if I'm correct or not.
No, you're 100% correct. And in fact, when I went through DeGroote, there was 4 veterans, myself being one, and 3 CAF members, and then 2 motor vehicle injury participants in the program as well, because that's a big part of what they do over there. They treat everybody. Now, there's, as you know, the research tells us that 20% of the population suffer from chronic pain. When you compare that to people with a military background or probably policing background, it jumps to 40% for men and 50% for women. So the interesting thing is that, yes, it is transferable across any person in the country, but it's also transferable globally. What we do at the CPCoE, what we research, is applicable to any veteran wearing a uniform, whether it be in Germany, Australia, or any other place. They go through the same things. They would result in the benefit of some of the research that we do when they look at it, and it is equally valuable to them no matter where they live, because again, the injuries are created the same way, and there's no reason that it can't be transferable to somebody else somewhere else, or really anybody living with chronic pain. These strategies will work for anybody.
Yeah, and we've seen this with this podcast. I mean, that's one of the reasons I started the podcast, was to kind of cut through a lot of the noise and to provide that evidence base. But some of the researchers we do have on this podcast are funded by the CPCoE to conduct research. And from what we hear from our audience, this is helping them as well. So you're right. And so if we, I guess, move down the road and look at what maybe the CPCoE is doing differently, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's actually the outcomes at the end. So yeah, we do research, and it takes a long time for research to be impactful, but we look at knowledge mobilization. So maybe you can touch a little bit on that, why that's different, what the CPCoE is doing with the research when the research is complete.
Right. Yeah, and that's probably the money shot in what we do, Tom, and is a great point. And for people like me with a limited attention span, it's something that is going to be very beneficial to any veteran or any person suffering from chronic pain, as you've identified. So the KM process, or knowledge mobilization process, is built right into now the request for proposals that go out for research to the various institutes. So when the researcher does research on chronic pain within the veteran community, they're bound by their contract to produce something after it is all said and done. So as opposed to delivering a 90 to 150 page manuscript, which you'll expect me to flip through, they have to create a product. They have to create a video, a paper, some sort of tangible product that allows me, the veteran, to review what they've done, put it into my language that I'm going to understand, and look at it, from a 3 to 5 minute time frame, and understand, oh, okay, that really makes sense. I should look into this more. And the interesting thing is, when we go on our traveling road shows and we do information booths, one of the products that goes out the door quickest is the one that talks about improving the well-being for people with chronic pain by doing yoga. So isn't that interesting in this day and age where that's the number one takeaway when we do information booths, is people looking to improve their chronic pain by doing yoga. So again, to wrap that one up, is that when they do their research, they're going to produce something that we can generate and we can send out to the masses or anyone on our mailing list to say, hey, here's the research we did, and here's what they found, and here's the paper that describes how it will benefit you as a person or your family.
And even for clinicians, I mean, not just for patients or for veterans, it's for clinicians as well, to give them an understanding. One, I mean, if you're dealing with military veterans and you look in the biopsychosocial model of chronic pain, the mindset and identity is important. And then the same would be for the policing world. But it's also for people who are struggling and saying, okay, well, if I'm depressed, why is my chronic pain getting worse? Or vice versa. And so they're able to communicate that with their clinician, and also clinicians understanding what if they have a veteran come to them, they understand the world that person's coming from. So they're able to connect the two and be able to help that person. So I think that's what I've picked up from some of the outcomes when we look at knowledge mobilization and from the research projects.
Yeah, Tom, and you're absolutely right. And I'm going to take you back to your days at Royal Roads University doing your master's degree in leadership, and talk about systems thinking, the process and the overall concept that we do. Even though we specifically don't call it that, it is exactly what it does. It goes out to clinicians, goes to veterans, goes to researchers, goes to family members. So it's a top-down, all-encompassing model that does teach or reach every person that's in that stratosphere that treats veterans. And that can be, anything from a clinician to a researcher to a physiotherapist to a family member. So it is that all-in process and that systems thinking model that we employ at CPCoE. So we ensure that education is transferable across all bounds.
Yeah, and then I think the next step too is we look at the MVAC, the Military Veteran Alpine Challenges, where we're using a lot of that research and actually using it with veterans, going through education, looking at the empowering with knowledge as well as the mindset side, and then providing purpose at the end. So I mean, that's another outcome of the CPCoE. When you look at research, it's not just about research, but it's actually the outcome to people at the end of the day, to benefit with something.
That's the only way we're going to get better and improve, or speak to our mission statement about improving the well-being of their lives. But when you talk about MVAC, which, it's such a unique program and so beneficial to the members that do go through that, it talks to also the creativity and the innovation that we have at CPCoE. We just don't, lock a bunch of people with white coats on who do research and then generate a paper. It's doing things like getting a bunch of military veterans out and climbing a mountain, and then doing the research after the fact. So, that's what's exciting about working here, is that it's not just, the cut and dry, painstaking research that is very important, but it's innovation, it's creativeness, it's getting behind stuff like that, and promoting it as a model globally of something that really works and is very cool. And I think the veterans really enjoy it.
Well, and that goes right into the veteran engagement process, which is same. I mean, we've talked, there's patient engagement, but there's also veteran engagement. And I think the CPCoE is leading the path in that as well. What I find important when we look at chronic pain, I think it's beneficial for me and many other people, especially, going through the MVAC or people listening to the podcast, is just knowledge is power. And so you're right. I mean, I'm not going to read 150. Well, I do, but a lot of people may not read 150 page manuscript, but they will listen to a short video summarizing what that project says.
Yeah, I would agree. And when I talk to people about chronic pain and in veteran communities or outside of veteran communities, that knowledge is power is super important because, as veterans, we are very good patients because our whole career has been spent going to places and doing things that people tell us to do. So when you tell us that this is going to help us be better and be more informed, then we're going to be all in and we're going to go over there and do that because, hey, somebody told me that that's going to improve my well-being of my chronic pain or my mental health. I'm all in, and we're very embracing of this knowledge to say, we truly are all hoping to get better and hoping to feel better. So everything's on the table, and we'll do anything that we come up with it, the CPCoE or some other institute comes up with that is going to make us better, because that's the end game, is that I want to feel better. My life's going to improve. My family relationships are going to improve. Everything in my circle of influence is going to be better because I don't feel as much pain as I used to be before. So that's key. That knowledge is super important in its power within our sphere.
Yeah, and we heard that just from Andrea Furlan, who's has come back on talking about when you speak to your clinician, because a lot of clinicians may not understand what a person's going through. So they have that knowledge, which they can get from a place like the CPCoE because they're doing the research. Then it helps them as well. I think for me, in my space, in the space I've been in, I think this is important for people who are trying to get better. And I think the process is important. And I think that's what's unique about the CPCoE is not just, I guess I'm putting a plug in for it here, but not just doing the research, like you said, but actually having outcomes that are going to help people at the end of the day.
And that's what we do. That's who we are. And that's what we'll continue to be, because again, there's more and more information coming out every day. There's more studies. There's more research that other people do that we haven't done, but we can piggyback on and say, okay, maybe we'll improve that a little bit, and maybe we'll relook at it from a veteran perspective. So there's so much out there that we can bring into our fold, and we can do anything that we set our minds to. And we've got a fantastic advisory council of veterans that will drive that for the next 20 years.
Well, Cam, thanks for being on the show, and glad you're on the team, which is a great team, both the advisory council and everybody who's supporting the CPCoE to get it done.
It's been my pleasure, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So on our next show, which will be the last episode of season 5, we're going to talk to Dr. Max Sung. He's going to be back. He's going to talk more about arthritis and some of the treatments that are available. So if you're interested in learning more about arthritis, you can listen to that on the next episode. For feedback about the show or more information on chronic pain, you can visit our website, veteranschronicpain.ca, or follow us on Facebook and X at Chronic Pain COE, and on Instagram at chronicpain_COE. Once again, Cam, thanks for being on the show. And to our audience, stay safe and keep the hope alive.
The Most Painful Podcast
is produced for the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence by Story Studio Network.